Thanks so much, Kyle, and thanks everyone for joining today. After that great panel on DeFi, we're now going to talk a little bit about NFTs. I'm Jamil, the founder of Gamma.io, which is the largest NFT marketplace on Stacks. And we have an amazing panel with 4 incredible people who have had a tremendous influence on Stacks. I think everybody in this panel has done, an incredible job of moving the ecosystem forward, and they're just an incredibly smart group. So we have Mark, the creator of Megapont, which is one of the first and the most successful NFT projects on Stacks. We have Brian, the creator of Satoshibles, an NFT collection that originally started on Ethereum, actually, and which was the first to bridge to Stacks and has seen incredible success on that Bitcoin culture angle of NFTs. And we have Jessica, the creative director at Vayner3, the co-founder of Unum game, with a lot of exciting things coming up there, and just a huge Stacks advocate and a huge cheerleader for the ecosystem. And last but not least, Louise, formerly at the Stacks Foundation, now the founder of Ryder, which just released the incredibly successful community namespaces, and there's a lot going on in the hardware space coming up. So the title is How Marketplaces Will Help NFTs Evolve, but I actually think in my experience, it's almost been the other way around. I think all of you have fundamentally shaped how marketplaces have evolved on Stacks and have been, the leaders in the ecosystem. So just to start off, in your consulting work, you've seen a lot of projects over the bear market. Has the way you've thought about your own projects or what you've seen changed, like both in the strategy and prioritization? And how has that affected the way you think about NFTs?
Even before we got into this whole bear market narrative, a lot of the brands and a lot of what we've been encouraging bigger brands to do is to release digital collectibles. Also, we don't say NFTs anymore. That's like a dirty word. We say digital collectibles. To release digital collectibles for free as a way of rewarding their most loyal fan base and give their fan base a way to transition into this technology without charging them for it, right? So it has changed because we're going around and kind of advising bigger organizations to do that. Naturally, a lot of other organizations model their behavior after what they see. So I expect to see a lot more free digital collectibles that ladder up into other things, like give you access to purchase products within their ecosystem or participate in the actual development and design of those products.
Yeah. Mark, does that line up with some of what you've seen? Has the bear market in the past few months sort of changed how you view Megapont and how you view your project, or is it roughly staying kind of along the same path?
I wouldn't say it's affected our roadmap just yet, personally speaking, primarily because we plan out 6 to 12 months in advance anyway. And we've really only been in this bear market for 6 months now, thereabouts. But I do think the ease of capital that was accessible to projects just a year ago has now vanished. So we're certainly seeing this increasing demand for free mints or low cost mints. The whole why can we price go up every single day has kind of dissipated. It doesn't exist anymore. So now you're seeing investors, collectors, whatever you want to call them, be much smarter around what projects they buy into. And there's a lot of consolidation happening. People are narrowing 100 projects down to 3 to 5 and really putting their time into just a few now. So we need to be mindful that the attention from the community is not as constant as it once was, and just plan accordingly around that, I think.
Yeah, Brian, have you seen something similar? How has sort of the Satoshibles ecosystem evolved, especially with the dynamic between the ETH market and the Stacks market? How have you seen your planning and your perception of how the NFT projects will evolve?
Yeah, similar to what Mark suggested as well. It's like the kind of the hype has kind of died down a little bit. We were all riding the wave last year, and everything was all amazing when people were buying everything. And but the overall kind of roadmap, like Mark said, it's also not changed for us. We have a clear goal where we want to head to. It might just take a little bit longer. Funding is an issue for every project, I guess, and you need to maybe be a little bit more frugal with what you're doing now, and choose elements that you work on a little bit more smarter. I find it's also really cool to try and team up with other projects and, help each other out where we can. I found some success there as well. And, the community side of things, your core community really becomes kind of solidified in a bear market, I would say. I've found had a lot of great conversations with my community, basically saying, we're still here and we're really excited about the future and everything. So that's really encouraging for us, because it is tough to work when the kind of hype is gone and you think, oh no, we've got to make it out of this, So yeah, you kind of you just stick with it, stick with your community, and keep going, keep building.
Yeah, Louise, I know your project is oh, sorry, Jess.
I was saying it's really interesting to hear the perspective of the folks on the panel, because, you're very much in like the Web3 world entirely. And I'm working with brands that don't normally engage with the Web3 community, and they're trying to figure out how to authentically utilize this technology. So for them, the bear market hasn't impacted them much, right? Because they weren't holding crypto in the first place. They were kind of afraid of it and weren't dabbling in that environment. So I haven't seen the same like lack of or decrease in excitement about the space or about projects from the world I'm in. People are like, oh, this is the new world of technology and we have to get involved in this or we're going to get left behind. There's a lot of excitement outside of the Web3 space for Web3. If you haven't been, collecting NFTs this whole time and you're experiencing what it's like to be in this moment after riding the highs of the waves just not too long ago, I can see how there's this perception or feeling where you're like, oh man, people are kind of like not stoked about this anymore. But from outside of the space, there's still a lot of excitement about Web3 and about digital collectibles. Again, we don't say NFTs anymore, but I think tying the digital collectibles to real world physical products or things that brands are doing that people already love them for, like there's no shortage of excitement and delight around those products. So tying this new technology to their existing products and giving fans another way to engage with those products, that's super exciting for consumers and for the brands themselves. And it gives people a way, an easy onboarding into interacting with this technology without even realizing it.
Have you seen any sort of major brands focus a lot more on that utility aspect, or are they just learning this? Is that how they sort of started out in the mindset from the beginning?
I mean, everything's about utility, right? Like that whole era of, I don't know, just drop a thing with weird looking art is, I don't want to say like over, because of course you get the right personality and right energy behind it. You could do that. You could do anything, right? But as far as that being the focus of what people want to do, that's definitely, if anything, that's actively what people want to avoid doing.
Yeah, makes sense. Louise, I know your project isn't directly like an NFT collection. It's more of like a large scale company, but NFTs are certainly part of your strategy, right? So how do you view NFTs and sort of linking up with utility and in like the role basically your company plays?
Yeah, no, there's a lot of questions there. There's like so many questions, but I think I'm going to unwrap it one by one. But before I unwrap it, I think there was a really good conversation that Mark brought up, and then Satoshibles, Brian, and also Jessica, because if you look at the current market now, there's a reason why there's a lot of free mints, right? And there's a reason why brands in traditional web are getting excited. So right now we're in a cycle. Okay, my opinion are all debatable. I'm not claiming anything. It's just like my thesis. So we're in a cycle where we take out the speculative premium of the NFTs and we're going to attach it to what we call an established floor value. And that established floor value will come on a Web3 brand, which Jessica pretty much mentioned. And I think for me, when I think about digital collectibles, because she will hate me if I say NFTs, it's all about changing the relationship between consumer and the product owners, right? So now you can actually build these subsequent experiences in order to build a brand trust and brand value on what you're creating. So yeah, that's pretty much it on like what NFT is. Then for Ryder, it's pretty much the same, right? So imagine what does a hardware organization look like in Web3? what will happen when a hardware organization changes the relationship between consumers, right? I mean, I hate to take a shot at Apple or like other hardware engineering companies, but come on, guys, should we add more camera next time and maybe a little bit of pump and dance? There's a little bit of like fanboy happening, right? So I think once you use digital collectibles as a vehicle between those two, what do you call this, like audience, there's going to be a spark of something new. The same for Ryder. So maybe in the future, we have Ryder 1, and we're actually going to put out our product, Alpha Leak here. It's called Digital Twin Tags. It's going to come out this Q4, and it's all about merging the physical and digital world together. Projects like Satoshibles or Megapont can actually utilize it, even big brands. Yeah, I think that's like a good play. And lastly, just to wrap up the conversation, yeah, I think just the relationship behavior is going to change. That's how we think of it, right?
So how do you think NFTs incentivize that change in behavior versus a traditional hardware company? And have we seen any examples of that in the space, or do you think it's just starting to evolve now?
I think all the pieces are there. It's just a matter of evolving the current infrastructure. For example, you have the marketplace like Gamma, and then you have like NFT communities such as Megapont, and you also have like Unum and VaynerMedia, Jessica Greenwalt, right? So there will be a scenario wherein, for example, a Megapont will do. So I'm just gonna play a scenario here for everybody. So you have the physical product and it's platonic rendering, and now we call it digital twin, right? So I'm very bullish on like redeem and retain and how NFT marketplaces like Gamma will actually include it on their marketplace. So maybe I get a notification about an upcoming Megapont drop, but then it's their thing. It's this jacket, Megapont jacket. But because I already own two of their jacket from before, then I just instant get whitelist, right? And I have my own time of the day to actually complete the subtraction. And then the day comes, I have the jacket, and that jacket I just scan, and then I receive the NFT on it, which I could also rock on the metaverse. So when I rock it on the metaverse, also in real life, it has locational trigger, the Megapont jacket. So maybe I go to a Megapont meetup, a Megapont event, and then it further enhance social experiences. And then my wallet will be filled with a lot of digital goodies from proof of attendance all the way to exclusive access to a Megapont party or like Satoshible party. Imagine you also have a monitoring data for that jacket. Maybe I wear it on the streets, you know which places I go. I, as a user, can now sell it to the manufacturer that made those jackets. And I get the USC, a stable coin of it, right? Of course, if you're like privacy, you're like a cyberpunk, all anonymous, you can also opt out. Then the question is, what does a role that a marketplace plays here? Maybe I get bored. I'm going to sell my Megapont. I'm out. I'm done with crypto. And Jessica here wants it. So Jessica will actually receive the jacket. But before that happens, you need an NFT and the funds on escrow. And that's where the marketplace will come in. So the marketplace will take the NFT and escrow. I send the jacket to Jessica, and Jessica, he saw the jacket and he scans it and it proves authenticity. Now Gamma will release the NFT and font. That's how I see it play out in the next like 9 to 12 months. So I'm very excited because you're just gonna see it merging together, like physical and digital world.
Yeah, I think it seems like now is a time when a lot of people are starting to focus a lot more on infrastructure and some of these like primitives that you're mentioning that people need to continue the development of NFTs, like these fundamental protocol level things. I know Mark, for example, a big part of the stuff that you're working on with Apes Together is focused on tooling. What do you see as like sort of the fundamental tooling primitives that are missing from NFTs right now that will be important for, I guess, both NFTs and marketplaces to evolve in the future?
I've taken it back just a little bit. I think it's telling to see, the most successful NFT projects now raise VC capital. And that kind of alarmed quite a few collectors. And I think it's, are we becoming the product now? Are we the end consumer, not the stakeholders of these entities? There's some big ones, Yuga Labs, obviously, and Doodles are the most recent example of this. And I think it's just these large NFT projects, knowing that to become a sustainable business, they really need to do one of two things. And one of them is to turn their collectors into their consumers. And the other one is to do what a traditional startup does. And that's just build until they build something that people want. And I think the large players in this industry now are fully aware that they can't keep minting JPEGs to people and charging 0.1 Ethereum 10,000 times every 6 months. So I think you can build tooling, whether that's to help other projects, so you become like a project launchpad or something along those lines, or you're charging for advice. You're becoming like the S&P of the crypto world, or whether it's, hey, we're going to go out and build an entertainment brand or a big media brand like Doodles are saying, right? Or another example is like Creeps, where we're going to have like fashion lines and we're going to work in music and media. And I do think that's where a lot of other projects will just disappear. Even $1 million 6 months ago from an Ethereum mint is now worth like $300,000. And if you've already paid out to people and you've got, say, $150,000 of runway left and you've got a team of 10, the next year is going to be really hard because your floor price is now below mint and you can't raise more funds. So you either go to VCs or you do something else. So I think the move to tooling is just projects that are no longer projects, they're businesses, pivoting until they find something that sticks to become sustainable. I don't think it's the industry saying, hey, we don't want art anymore. I think that's not particularly true. You see some of the pure art plays doing very, very well right now. Photography is doing well as well. So the projects that didn't have that clear vision are in muddy waters because they probably had no reason to exist in the first place.
Brian or Jessica, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, when I launched Satoshibles last year, I wanted just to get into the space and try and build something and get it out there. I also met Ayub, our artist. I wanted to also promote his work and get his stuff out there. So, the word utility at the time, I was really early at the NFT space. I launched it just in June to 2021. So the word utility was actually not a thing then. And then we happened to mint out. Everything was great. All of a sudden, I now have a community. They're all looking at me like, what's next? And then, other projects started popping up. Like there was some projects that are earning people money. There was projects doing other things. And then, I'm like, okay, we'll do something then, we'll continue to advance it. And I kind of just always had the mentality of like, well, if we build something for Satoshibles, maybe it can be used for other projects. That's the kind of mindset I've had. And, when we launched Stacks Bridge, again, it's called Stacks Bridge. It's not Satoshibles Bridge. So the idea is to try and get other projects to be able to utilize the bridge and come over to Stacks as well. So yeah, it's just a cool time to build stuff right now. And I think that accessibility is also really important. I'm really excited about people who are building stuff that enables artists with no technical background to jump on. And I know that Gamma are doing amazing things with that, with their creator panel. And then everything that Mark's building as well is got to be really helpful to try and get artists into the community, because I think that more than any other blockchain, Stacks is all about community. You can feel it right away as soon as you join. So anyone who's building stuff for communities and enabling artists and other people like photographers and things to get into digital assets, not NFTs, is really cool.
On that note, just I touch so many different projects that what I see is it's totally fine to have these one-off, pretty contained projects, and ideally you're working on a longer-term vision, but that's not always going to make the most sense for every brand. As long as you're very clearly communicating what the objective, the ultimate goal of that program that you're putting together is. If it is just a one-time collectible, you use this, you display it, that's totally fine, as long as you let people know up front what they're getting for that. If it's a long-term program and then you're setting up this roadmap and telling people, here's what you're going to get, you're committing to that. So as long as you're clearly communicating what a collector gets from the purchase of this digital collectible and delivering on that, it's fine to design a program either way.
I think over the past couple months, just as we've seen new NFT use cases and utilities come out, we've also seen new marketplace models come out. And most notably, for example, we have SudoSwap, which uses almost a Uniswap style model to price NFTs. So it's sort of treating them as like a pool that you can swap in one NFT in, one NFT out, and treating them all basically as the same. And one of the biggest things about this is that they also don't charge any royalties. So if a creator asks for royalties, they won't honor that. do you think marketplaces will change fundamentally from the existing model with royalties, with the structure that we have now? Or will the dynamics of royalties sort of evolve over time? Mark, I know you've been thinking a lot about royalties with Megapont. How do you feel about pseudo-swap and sort of the evolution of that royalty model?
I think broadly speaking for marketplaces, they will change massively over the next 12 months. And they have to, these kind of meta marketplaces don't really exist in the real world. There are a few exceptions to that, but they are the rare exceptions. I think, you know, as we see with the traditional art world, you'll see marketplaces go into their specific niches, whether it's blue chips that are very expensive and buyer pays model, or it's a marketplace that facilitates some time-based auction that has a whole bunch of participants. And I think marketplaces will need to start start marketing to projects and providing some value add to them. You know, we're already starting to see that people will gravitate towards a marketplace they love, right? We have that on Stacks. We have a whole bunch of people in Megapont who will only use Gamma. There are a whole bunch of people on Ethereum who will only use OpenSea. And they'll only use OpenSea even though they're financially incentivized to use LuxRare, but they still want to use OpenSea. And I think marketplaces will start to become seen as businesses with people behind them that focus on one specific niche and add a specific set of values to a collector, as opposed to being these meta market versus that, hey, we just allow you to list and sell your NFTs, whether you go down the analytics route, whether you go down the 0% route and say, actually, these non-fungible tokens are fungible now. Hey, have at it. Here's a swap pool. So I think we'll just see marketplaces go into specialized niches, which I do think will be really good for the space. And each marketplace will determine where they best fit, I guess, with their user base.
You know, this is interesting because I see a lot of brands actually trying to create their own ecosystem for their digital products instead of recommending that a user go to any of these marketplaces. Because, you know, I'm dealing with brands whose customer base is not Web3 savvy, right? So to even try to get them to install a wallet, go to a site to mint a thing, and then tell them like, okay, now there's this whole other platform where you have to go look at and learn about these other digital collectibles that you could potentially buy. It's a lot. So I see a lot of brands wanting to create like a safer space for their non-technically inclined user base where they could just go to, you know, type in client name website.com/digital collectibles or marketplace. And that's where they'll be showcasing all of the NFTs that they've created for the various programs that they're launching. And I think for NFT marketplaces like Gamma, if they provide solutions that make it really easy for brands to do that, to just have a white labeled like landing page for all of their digital collectibles, that's what people are asking for now.
Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah. Sorry, yeah, I was just going to say there's a ton of different angles to it. You know, that like you say, the brands are coming at it and trying to target it that way, and then you've got NFT collections like ours, and you know what Jamil said about the pseudo swap thing. I think it's really interesting when you start merging the kind of DeFi space with the NFT space. You know, with a huge DeFi boom, obviously on Ethereum in 2020, a lot of rug pulls, of course, as well, but like a lot of interest in that space. So I think that's really interesting to me to see how all that evolves. You know, when you start to introduce liquidity pools into digital assets, how that all plays out. I think that's really interesting.
I would say that projects should be very careful with what they do. You know, because a big Web2 brand comes in and builds their own marketplace infrastructure, doesn't mean that every project should be doing that. You know, it's very Web2. In my last startup, we worked with one of the biggest auction houses in the world providing KYC, and we built this whole big fancy platform. We're like, oh, look how amazing this is. And they essentially said, no, let's throw that away. We're using the API because we have to control our entire brand experience. It's so important to us. So they want to control everything. They have to control everything. Whereas a smaller NFT project shouldn't try to do that. You know, Megapont had its own marketplace. It was great until users expect you to add features. And, you know, for anyone who's run a Web2 startup, you focus on what you primarily want to do. Don't go ahead and rebuild absolutely everything, right? So we very quickly have shut it down because we can't add features like Gamma can. We can't keep up with marketplace innovation. So don't just follow big Web2 brand, because the Web2 brands are going to do that because they have to do that in many ways.
Yeah, it's been really interesting to see the dynamics around marketplaces. Some of the assumptions have been quite counterintuitive. Like, everybody assumed that as soon as OpenSea added Solana support, they would steamroll Magic Eden, and that didn't seem to happen. Or that as soon as Coinbase, which is a behemoth, rolled out their NFT marketplace, that it would take over the world. So it's been interesting to see some of those counterintuitive outcomes come out. In the last 10 minutes, if you could change one thing about the way current NFTs, so when we're talking about utility or just the standards of NFTs, or the way that marketplaces work, if you could change one thing about the way NFTs or marketplaces work, what would that be? Louise, do you have any thoughts?
I got cut off. Was it my turn?
Yeah, just one thing you could change about NFTs or marketplaces.
Yeah, I think not more so on the NFT side, but more so on the metaverse. I think metaverse is great, but in order to reach mass adoption for like all the marketplaces and NFTs in general, we should look at, okay, how do we actually use technology in order to better real life human experiences? Because that's where adoption is gonna come in. I don't think adoption is gonna happen on the metaverse, if we're being honest here. The last thing that I want is to get stuck on a PC. I've been home for 2 years with COVID. 2 years took away on my prime time, right? The last thing that I want is, okay, guys, let's go in the metaverse. Let's do this. No, I think we should change the way of thinking. What if we could actually build metaverse on our existing reality? I think that's how we should all think as builders moving forward. That's like my last piece of the puzzle, I think. But maybe the others could chime in more there as well. But yeah, that's like my conclusion.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, we're going to get there eventually, but if I could change it today, it would be, the onboarding, the kind of the people have to obviously download, like Jess said, have to download the wallets and get all this thing, and it's a big scary process, so I know we'll get there eventually, but if I could change it today, it would be just, make it super easy for people to get involved and own these digital assets, use the cool utility with them. So as I say, it's coming, but, I wish it was today.
I could jump on that. I wouldn't really change anything about NFTs specifically. It's really simple technology that just sits behind other things that we're doing. It's the interfacing with that NFT, with that data, the user experience of interacting with it at all that I would change, like making it easier for me as a collector, a consumer, to actually do something with that digital collectible, whether that's display it or reassemble it or remix it and mash it up with other digital collectibles. I'd love to see more innovative, interesting, fun things that I could do with the NFT itself for whatever content is attached to my NFT.
I wish that, my wish is I think we need a big paradigm shift in expectations from participants in the market on both sides, whether that's creators of projects and collectors of NFTs. I think it's unrealistic to expect that you can buy something for $50 and it be $1,000 in 1 week's time, and you somehow have a right to berate the creators of the project or anyone involved with the project when it doesn't do that. And I also think that people need to understand that the underlying price of an NFT is, for the most part, outside of the project's control. And again, it's not up to the project to control that price. But likewise, a project really has a duty to deliver on what it's promising. If you promise the world to your collectors and you don't deliver on anything, then they're going to come after you. In the traditional startup world, you can't raise $1 million and run off and do absolutely nothing, and then a year later say, oh, sorry, we tried, but delivered absolutely nothing. You would be held accountable. So there needs to be a little bit more accountability. And I think it's just taking a realistic view on this industry as a whole and try to support genuine creators as opposed to, hey, I can get rich overnight by potentially buying this that might go to zero. And I think speaking to Stacks specifically, it would be really good to focus on those smaller creators a lot more than we are. Megapont is a big project, it would be great if the smaller guys in the community have as big of a platform as we do, from absolutely everyone, right? We need little marketing from most people. It's the individual creators who need much more.
What do you think are the main things that could help improve the exposure for smaller artists on the marketing side?
Well, discovery and from a marketplace perspective has always been hard, right? It's hard in an almost Web 2 marketplace. It's very hard to find apps. I mean, go to Amazon, right? And go to Amazon and just browse to buy something. It's basically impossible, and their business model isn't built around that. It's, roughly what you want, you go there. But clothing is a good example. When you're browsing to buy clothing online, it's pretty much a nightmare anywhere. And I think NFTs are very similar. So discovery is a hard problem that I don't have a specific answer for. I think it's one for marketplaces to play around with different ideas and to challenge certain assumptions on that. But we need to do a lot more at taking risks of pushing creators who we know are sincere in their work. I think, speaking from a project perspective, we have a tendency to not promote creators when we know the individual personally. We know that their work is genuine. We know that they're not a rug pull. We know they're working really hard. And we know they're putting out quality work, whether it's just on the art or their utility roadmap is doing something innovative. And we don't promote those people and give them a helping hand as much as we should. And I think that's true to almost all market participants. We need to take more risks on promoting individuals when we can at least be somewhat confident of their intentions. I think we saw some rug pulls last year, and because of that, everyone is scared to now push out anything. However, it's now the norm that someone is doxxed, and you learn a little bit about a creator. So, someone made a good point to me in the Megapont Discord that one passing comment, I think, from myself in Discord turned some random collector into the biggest whale on one of the other members in Megapont's project. And it was just one comment. They listened, they saw me promoting their art, and they went out and bought a whole bunch of it. So I could do a little bit more on that. I think Megapont as a whole could, and I think everybody else, specifically in the Stacks ecosystem, could do more at taking risks on smaller creators. It won't be a home run every time, but there'll be something there for sure.
Definitely. And actually, we've seen on Gamma, at least over the past few months, that a larger and larger proportion of the volume has been on these auctions from smaller artists that have come over from platforms like Tezos and others that have just come to Stacks, release one or two art pieces and put them up for auction, as opposed to these 1,000 or 10,000 PFP style projects with a roadmap. So it's going to be interesting to figure out how to evolve our marketplaces to better support those creators. Because if you go on OpenSea's homepage or something, it's either curated or showing top or trending collections, which may not be the best incentives for lifting up smaller creators.
I think it'd be fun to see marketplaces also incorporate tools that give creators the ability to promote their work within that marketplace, like merging the apps of social media and the marketplace. So you can actually buy the product that you're looking at while browsing right from the platform that you're in. And that as a creator, you can share what you're working on with everyone who's already in that platform.
Yeah, I really love that idea. I think over the next few months, I'm really excited to work with all of you in sort of helping evolve Gamma and I'm sure all the other marketplaces on Stacks and elsewhere to better suit the needs of creators, to help evolve with the changing use cases of NFTs, as Louis mentioned, with things like Ryder and physical goods and hardware projects. So thanks so much, Louis, Jess, Brian, and Mark, again, for prolific creators and builders in this ecosystem. There are no better people to hear from than this. So I'm super grateful for their time.